Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Challenger Network News. I'm absolutely delighted today to welcome Jonny Inglis Seb Evans from Banquist to the show. Welcome, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Happy
much.
Friday.
Yeah. Happy Friday.
Yeah, it's Friday. That's why I love doing this show, because I know we're almost there. We're almost there.
Yeah.
So Jonny and Seb are the founders of Banquist. So what is Banquist? Founded in 2019, it's an ability. You have the ability to go in, choose a menu from some of the world's best chefs, and you learn to cook these dishes from scratch. You receive a hamper with everything you need to cook a Michelin star meal, including a starter, dessert, and what I like, the optional wine and the optional cheese, which I definitely partake in. And you get a recipe card with a link to a step-by-step video guide. So you watch, you cook, you learn, and in the end, you cook a Michelin star meal. Pretty cool stuff. And I got to say, as a Banquist customer, I've really enjoyed the experience. And one of the questions we'll be asking today, however, is can the in-home experience compete with what I think is pent-up demand for getting out of the house and into restaurants and theaters and bars and museums in a post-lockdown world? So we will definitely be talking a little bit about the guy's story, about Banquist, what they've learned, but also we'll look towards the future and what does this mean for the in-home experience, dining and beyond, going forward. Does that sound good, guys?
Perfect.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Great. Well, why don't we start? I think it would be cool for everyone just to hear your story, actually. If you could just tell us about, how Banquist came to be and the story, that'd be maybe a good place to start today.
Wonderful. Shall I start, Seb?
Yeah, go for it.
So I'm Jonny, and I guess how me and Seb split up at Banquist is I look after the product and the customer, and Seb looks after all of the other stuff that I don't want to touch. I sort of started my love for food following university. I went to work as a pot wash for a Michelin star restaurant, and I just spent like 16 hours a day washing pots. And I think that there's two ways that people respond when they're greeted with an environment like that, because it's so cutthroat, it's so difficult. The hours are punishing. People are not very nice to each other. And some people hate it and they can't wait to get out. And some people find it exhilarating. And I was definitely the latter. I just found it such an interesting world. So following there, working at a pot wash, I went to work for a brilliant company called What If Innovation. For anyone kind of looking out to start a career, it's just an incredible place because it's so creative. You're just launching products and services for really big companies. And I worked there for a couple of years. But I think the problem when you're launching and creating stuff for other people is that you eventually want to give it a go yourself. So I got obsessed with the idea of entrepreneurship, and Seb is an old school friend. We've known each other going on 14 years now. And, it's a testament to our relationship that we can still, we live together in Tottenham. So we haven't grown sick of each other yet. And we started scheming, trying to come up with an idea for a business. And the first one that we came up with was Fodder. And it was a tech-led office catering platform. So we had a bunch of smart fridges. We put them in really big office buildings. And people working in those offices would go up, unlock the fridge with an app and take their food. So it was like the most convenient office lunch you could imagine. And that was an exciting idea. So I quit my job and the job that I loved so much to pursue this idea. And this was February 2020. So overnight, we lost all our corporate clients, and I had to move back in with my parents, no way of making cash. So me and Seb hit the drawing board again and came up with Banquist. So Banquist was actually founded in May 2020. That was when we did our first hampers. So it was like initially a lockdown business. And I think that Seb can give a bit more flavor to that initial journey.
Yeah, so as Jonny said, we met at school when I went to work for OC&C after university, which is a strategy consultancy based in London. Similar to Jonny, always had ambitions to sort of have my own business and do something for myself. And as Jonny said, I think in May 2020, we sort of looked at I guess the UK hospitality industry and generally the UK consumer market, and thought, there's a huge amount of disruption going on at the moment. And with that, there's obviously lots of people who are coming into difficulties with their business, but there's probably also some big opportunities here as well. And I think that the part for us, or the key insight for us behind Banquist was, there's some huge businesses being built which will probably grow quite significantly over the next year at that time. So during coronavirus, that target, Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, weeknight meal recipe boxes. So what they're about is making your weeknight meal easier, more convenient, and as quick as possible. And we thought, as keen cooks, and particularly given that cooking is the UK's second biggest hobby behind fitness, there should be a solution for a Friday night or a Saturday night where you want to cook a really special meal and you want to take your time a little bit more, and you want to put something together that you couldn't normally do. So that was really the key insight, and I think it sort of grew from there, where we started collaborating with Michelin star chefs who come up with the menus for us, and they act as the facilitators, the teachers behind each menu, and get our customers cooking menus and dishes that they could never usually cook at home, all with the help of world-class ingredients from our suppliers.
Wow, I actually didn't realize that you had done the actual launch in the middle of lockdown. I was curious, do you think that lockdown is going to be one of those moments where there was so much kind of pressure that some of the best ideas, like there's some great ideas were born, and we're going to see more businesses like that coming out of this period? Do you think that's the case?
Yeah, I think absolutely. It was a time of, it was just like the Wild West. Me and Seb always talk about this, that anything went in that period. And we had nothing to lose as well. And there was a whole bunch of entrepreneurs who had their businesses wiped out by lockdown and had to innovate out of scarcity and out of necessity. And I often think that's when the very best ideas are born. A hell of a lot of technological innovations come out of wartime. And it was very much wartime. Everything was thrown out the window. We were having daily briefings on TV, and it really felt like a time of real change. And I think, there's a couple of things that it was very difficult launching a business in lockdown, because a whole load of suppliers weren't able to do business with us because they were looking after themselves. But then also it was a blessing, because we were able to get an audience with incredible chefs who would not normally have the time to work with us. And now we've built up the track record that they're going to trust us going forward.
Yeah, I can see that. I have to say, I was thinking about what my favorite Banquist meal was. It was definitely Peter Lloyd. I remember it was summer and we were sitting outside. I think we were between lockdowns, so we actually had people over the house for the first time. And we cooked one of your meals, which was great. It went down very well, by the way.
Fantastic. Good.
Yeah. Well, so what have you? Because this is definitely an emerging category, and we'll talk about kind of what does the future hold for it. But it'd be good before we get there, just what are some of the key insights you learned along the way about this category, or the product, or the value proposition?
I can probably talk more broadly, and then Jonny, you might want to take some of the consumer specific or product specific stuff. So I think when I, 2 or 3 years ago, I didn't know much about food and bev in general, and I think some of the things I've learned along the way are as an outsider probably helped. So first of all, I think food and bev, if you think about the wider e-commerce market, has such a long way to go in terms of online penetration. Still, the vast majority of food and beverage purchases happen in store, in restaurant, and there's only one way that's going, and that's going to be an increased rate of online adoption. And you see that in the UK, and COVID accelerated that trend, but it will only continue. And I think that one of the key observations we had early on was, fine dining in itself and cooking is such an analog experience. So whether it's you're cooking from a recipe book where you get given a recipe book probably for Christmas, and you might look at 2 or 3 recipes in there and then never touch it again, which is bonkers because it's the most bought category in books, but 90% of those books just don't get read because you only cook a couple of recipes. So it's such an analog area, and particularly in marketing, I think food and beverage in general has got such a long way to go. You've got, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but restaurants spending thousands of pounds on PR budgets, and they've got no idea what impact it's had, which is a bit insane, because with data now you can track, with a good campaign on the right channels, how many bookings have I got from that? And still, it's so traditional in the way it's done. So I think, for me, I think looking more broadly at the industry, there's some huge opportunities to sort of take best practice from other industries, whether it's marketing or your user journey and driving that further online.
Yeah.
And taking those to food and bev offers a huge opportunity for entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Jonny, before we go, I just want to remind everyone, if you have a question, please join in the conversation. Just write a question or comment, and we will pick it up and ask it to Seb and Jonny on the show. Sorry, Jonny, go for it.
Yeah, I think the biggest insight for me is the disparity between people creating food content and people consuming food content. And what I mean by that is Chef's Table on Netflix is into its 5th season, and MasterChef is getting some of the biggest viewership figures ever. And yet people are still not really pushing themselves in their own kitchens. And what is going on there? Why is that the case? When we launched our very first Banquist experience, it was very much bringing fine dining home. So it was like a posh takeaway. And the number one bit of feedback that we got from customers was, I want to learn how to cook that. Can I get the recipe for this? And then we realized, okay, Banquist has to be about teaching people how to cook, how to push themselves, and how to move from being food content consumers to food content creators. And that's why we think we're differentiated in the market, because we give people the tools and the ability to actually cook something that they would have normally seen on Netflix and be incredibly proud because they've done it themselves.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I can't claim that I did most of the cooking when we used Banquist. I did try, but just the pride you have in serving it to friends that come over, and the wow factor that they have, that what have you cooked? This is amazing. There's definitely something super gratifying about that. And I get that. We push ourselves, like you mentioned sports earlier, like exercise, fitness, like we push ourselves there. So why not push ourselves when we're cooking meals? And
exactly, that's another place that we feel like Banquist has a lot to grow into. So if you look at activities that are seen to be virtuous, like running, people are so pleased when they run a sub-hour 10K and they stick it up on their Strava for everyone else to see, and everyone gives kudos. I think cooking exists completely in that sphere where it seems to be virtuous, it seems to be bettering yourself at home. And there's a massive opportunity to build a community around that, where people are pushing themselves and people are giving kudos to each other for the huge amount of, achievements that they're creating at home.
Yeah, we did just get a question in from Enzo Santos. How did you get M-Stars to work with you? And do you think they'll work with you once business is back to normal?
So I assume M-Stars mean Michelin star chefs.
Yeah.
So when I was at Potwash, I had a head chef called Josh Barnes. And at the time, he really scared me because he was my boss, and he was a pretty brutal boss. But he was also a fantastic chef, and he ended up being a really good friend. And so I went to him when we came up with the idea for Banquist. We managed to secure him to be our first Banquist chef. And then, as I said, because the first lockdown was the Wild West, we could just approach huge chefs and they would give us time. So our second chef was Atul Kochhar, who is just the most lovely guy. He's 2 Michelin starred. So that was the second chef that we had on board. And then we worked with an amazing up and coming talent called Ruth Hanson. And very quickly we started to build a reputation in the industry, and we got inbound requests from chefs wanting to work with us. And it all snowballed from there. And to continue to work with us. Yes. Once business is back to normal. So one of the nice things about Banquist is we have an in-house recipe production team. And what that means is that Michelin star chefs, they only have to give us 2 days of their time to be able to work with us. And that 2 days can be spread across months. So it's really not time intensive, and it can fit around their day jobs, and they get paid for it.
Cool. Let's take the question from Ed as well, and then we can then shift gears to looking a bit towards the future. Are the cooking technique skills required also at the top end, or are the packs designed to be accessible to anyone? So kind of what's the difficulty level? With that in mind, how does this affect who you're targeting?
Yeah, it's a good question. So cooking techniques and skills, I think we adopt the opinion that when you provide a recipe video that goes alongside a written recipe, you'd be amazed at what you can achieve. And it goes back to what Seb said about cooking being so analog. It's so outdated, the way that people cook, following a written recipe, which doesn't offer any of the clarity that video content provides. So we find that we're able to get people doing pretty advanced cooking skills without any like antecedent cooking ability. So that's one thing. And then also we do offer a difficulty range on our menus. So you can come in at a more entry-level difficulty. Yeah.
Right. Great, very good question. So looking, maybe the last question we'll tackle for today, just looking towards the future, we're about to experience it here in the UK, in May when things really start to open up, hopefully, fingers crossed. And I mentioned at the beginning, there is a lot of pent up desire to just get out. Do you think that will, do you think that's going to impact business in the short term? And then more long term is, have people now realized the experience that they can bring into the home, and that therefore you're going to see more growth, and how might it expand beyond dining and that sort of thing? Broad question, but and a couple of questions in there, but let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah, so I think the way we think about it is at different timescales. So taking the long term, do we think that experiences are going to become more online and more at home? Yes, absolutely. So over the long 5-10 year timescale, that's absolutely a good place to be situated. Now, do I think that over the summer there's pent up demand? Absolutely, and we're seeing it now. No doubt are we seeing lower interest because people are out with their friends because it's sunny and they're catching up, making up for lost time. So no doubt over the summer, as hospitality reopens and as people are going on holiday because they finally can, and as they can go to restaurants again, any business that's operating in online or at home is going to have a slower growth or a slight decline, because that's just the reality of it. The last 12 months have been incredible for those businesses, and it can't continue forever.
Yeah.
I think for me anyway, at home experiences in particular, if you are positioned correctly and if you're genuinely bringing value to a customer, there's absolutely no reason why, just because you're at home, you should have a disadvantage to something in person. You've only got to look at whether it's Peloton or whether it's Netflix. All these things are basically bringing leisure activities into home, whether it's fitness or entertainment, right? And for us anyway, we class ourselves as something similar to them, and we want to bring cooking as a fun, enjoyable activity into people's homes, into their kitchens. And I think in the long term, that's a great place to be situated. But having said that, I think you'd be naive to sit here and say, do you know what, I don't think there's going to be any slowdown in demand over the summer, even though people haven't been to a restaurant in a year.
I think the one thing I'd add to that is that just as people behaved strangely in the beginning of lockdown, buying loads and loads of toilet paper and bread flour, I think people also are behaving strangely now. So last night I was sat in a park in Tottenham, and it was 2 degrees outside, and we were absolutely loving life, just drinking tins, where I would have never ever done that before. So I think that it's we're going to have some short-term weirdness, just as we had some short-term weirdness at the start of lockdown.
Absolutely. Well, it's really fascinating to think about the future of the experience. I do share your view that I think that, and I think Peloton and Netflix are good examples. So there's more and more content that we're able to consume at home and really create an incredible experience, which is, I think, terribly exciting for you guys and your business and for the industry itself. I do have one final question that's come in from Ryan. Dream chef you'd like to work with?
This is This is Ryan Atkins, who we know well. Jonny, I guess you can probably take that, can't you?
Yeah, I reckon Tom Kerridge is a bit of a dream chef for us because he's so personable. He's a fantastic teacher anyway, and he also cooks real crowd pleaser food, full of flavour. He has the backing of the critical acclaim behind him as well. He would be a real dream.
Great. Well, Jonny and Seb, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. I want to wish you all the best with your business going forward. And everyone who watches this video, if you haven't already tried giving Banquist a go, please do so and help these guys out. I wish everyone a great weekend. Happy dining over the weekend and enjoy it. And we'll see you next time on Challenger Network News. Thanks.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thanks, Brandon. Cheers.